Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talk with TQ and the Energy Stoners Cafe. I'm always so pleased when you come to visit the show because I feel really great about presenting the most interesting people I can find on the planet. Tonight, we have someone that's a friend of the show. She's been on twice before, and she always has the most interesting things to say. She talks about things that we're curious about, we might know about, but we really know we want to know more. And she knows it. I refer to her as the real deal. Okay? She's an astrologer, and she's an excellent astrology, and she can go deep with it. Like not just your newspaper astrology column. She really knows what she's talking about. Her name is Ambika Devi. Welcome back to the show, Ambika.
Thank you so much, Toni. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you. And, I try to time things in a way that it's sort of appropriate to a particular moment or time for myself and for my guests, and mainly, I have to say, for the audience. Now, we're on the cusp of Valentine's Day. And for some people, that's a great day. And for some people, it's a horrible day. I guess it depends on who you are and your circumstances. But we know that Valentine's Day is the day of love. It's a day for lovers. It's a day for friendship. I think it's anything to do with love, friendship, lovers, all of that good stuff, all the good stuff. And so it is something that I think that we're really inclined to want to celebrate. You wrote a book, Ambika, called Cupid is a Bastard. And I read the book, and I read it like in bits and pieces. It's beautiful. A lot of interesting poetry in there. And I agree that Cupid can be a bastard. But tell the audience why Cupid is a bastard.
Well, first and foremost, mythologically speaking, we don't know who his father is. There's several stories and several myths about who his dad is, so it's just a perfectly valid statement, right? But the book came about because I began writing a short story, and when I write, I often give it a little title. That way I can find it in my files later. So it's kind of a moniker, a nickname, but often it becomes a title. And that's what happened that day. I was with my writing group, and we write from prompts. There was a prompt that just triggered me to a recent experience about dating through a dating app that ended quickly, kind of burned hot and, belly flopped, I guess. And then, so there I was on this Saturday writing to this prompt and started this one-page short story and titled it Cupid is a Bastard. We happened to have had a visiting speaker that day. In our quarterly meetings, we have these speakers that come to present. Once in a while, I present, and I'll actually be presenting in March of 2023. And so I started reading my piece. We write to the prompt, and then we take turns and we read. And I titled this Cupid is a Bastard. And the agent, who was our guest speaker, exclaimed on the mic, "Wow, that's an amazing title." So of course, after I was done, I went and bought the URL and decided I would use it because it was a short story. So maybe it would turn into a book. Somehow I knew, I guess, in that moment that it would become a book. And at the time, we had been writing a lot of poetry and memoir kind of pieces in the group. Not necessarily everybody, but there was a trend towards that. So the book developed, and I began looking and writing about all different kinds of love. And I talk to people on a regular basis, to clients, about relationships. And so that's another kind of tongue-in-cheek, because, that short story started with that. So that weaves through the book. There's poetry, flash fiction, photography, artwork, recipes, chocolate. There's a lot of different stuff.
The poetry in it is fabulous. And some of it is like kind of comical. I like some of the titles. One that I really found sort of funny, just reading the title. And it's really something where you quoted, you've written some interesting stuff in there. And I really encourage the audience to get the book because it really, there's some levity in it, but at the end you really take away, there's a sort of a more serious, purposeful takeaway. But I like this, that you actually quoted Shakespeare, and you wrote you included one of William Shakespeare's pieces that's called "Get Gone with You," or something, you dwarf, and it just tickled me so much.
From Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yes.
But there's several Shakespeare quotes
Yes.
in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to use quotes in the book because the book was born from the idea of writing from quotes.
Mm-hmm.
So those are quotes I love, and I felt like they fit with my poems or wherever they ended up. It's a peek inside my journal, and then the opening section of the author's notes is a mini memoir of me and my journey with creativity through my loving mama, who a lot of the book is about. And you and I share that, Toni.
Yeah, no, we share some things very in common about our mothers. Even down to like a plant,
Yes.
which is interesting, because I won't get into my mother. She was the best. She was the best. She should still be here. But this is the book, just for the audience to take a look at it. Cupid is a bastard. Don't let him get over on you. That's my subtitle. But it's an interesting book, and the poetry in it, you really do kind of open your heart in here, and you do it in a way that's sometimes there's some things that made me feel like sad because out of empathy, but there's some things that just made me just laugh and laugh.
Good. That was my intention. I wanted to trigger a vast range of emotions and feelings and sensations, and let you in a little more closely to who I am. And as you spoke of earlier, Toni, I do bring it together with what I feel is the most important love of all, which is to love yourself. And the reason why this makes perfect sense to me is something I heard Marissa Peer say one day. I have had the pleasure of sitting in an audience listening to her speak. She's the one who started, or at least the first person I heard speak, "I am enough." And I think this is such a profoundly perfect phrase, a mantra. And we've talked about mantras or prayers and affirmations before. This is the perfect one, "I am enough." To lift your self-esteem. Self-esteem is so important, and that's a part of self-love. And what she said is that we can only experience and feel love to the same height and level that we love ourselves from others. So from others, we can only feel love to the level we love ourselves. So think about that. It's really important. And to be grateful for life. If we start getting angry and pissed about that, that's not helping. And as you know, getting to know me, Toni, and if you've listened to me before, everyone, I talk about love a lot. And here we are coming into what we call the season of love, right? Right. It should be every day, every moment.
It is every day, every moment. It's always the season of love in my life.
That's beautiful.
And, it's just some people, everybody's different. I don't really try to put my standards on them, but I think it's really important. I think it's the most important thing from day to day and in your entire life is to be able to reach that point of it. I think that reading this book, and I said it once before when I interviewed you about it, I think that everybody should have this. It's like one of these things, like I read a lot of books from a lot of authors, and there's so many amazing people out there, but every now and then I'll say there's a book that really should be part of your repertoire. It should be in the house as a reference. And I think that it's the kind of book that, assuming that we've experienced love, and I'm going to make a general statement that I would assume that anybody that's experienced love has experienced the heartbreak of it. I think that this is the kind of book that can help you sort of get through it, even though you could probably do that on your own and come out whole. And I agree with you about loving oneself. You think, a lot of people say, they think it's self-aggrandizing or something, but if you don't love yourself, You can only love another person as much as you love yourself.
True. It goes both ways. It truly is measured by that level of self-love. And the other thing I see a lot of people make mistakes on is when they experience a heightened sensation, they're looking for that same exact sensation. We have to realize every single opportunity is different. Uh, the book has it is my lockdown pandemic book, it project. I live alone, I don't have a pet, so I went through it by myself with my thoughts, writing this book, putting it together to heal and discover what's this all about for me. And that's what I came out of it with, is loving myself even more and loving others and life and nature, even to an even greater depth.
Well,
Even greater depth.
right, and that's such a beautiful thing. But explain to the audience, because I understand this, that getting into self love is not narcissism. A lot of people just, oh, narcissism, that's not me. I've had people say that, but explain how important it is to love oneself and why.
I would say look at the thoughts that go through the mind that you become aware of. Are they kind? Are they loving? Are they peaceful? Are they about you? Are they about others? It doesn't matter. They're all about you. Whether you think it's a thought about an external situation or person. This is why each New Year's Day I read The Egg out loud to whoever will listen.
Tell me about that, the egg.
The Egg is a short story by Andy Weir. He's the author who wrote the book that the movie The Martian was
Oh,
made
yeah.
from. So that's how people recognize who he is. And this short story is a very potent and kind of sci-fi way. He's a sci-fi writer. Well, obviously, or not. I mean, we're talking about going to Mars, but
We are talking about that, actually.
yeah, so it's not so sci-fi anymore. This particular short story of The Egg is a very beautiful view that explains we are all one. There is only one source or divine source. And if you say the G word, if you say God, there's only one source, or all paths lead to God. I don't want to go in that theosophical debate direction, just accepting that there's a divine force of some sort. Whatever that picture shows up in your mind is fine. And to me, the way he does it, without blowing the story, if you haven't read it or listened to me read it, is that you come to realize everything is you. Now there's modern psychology paths that make that out to be either in the dream state. There are spiritual paths that make that out to be of what we are here to realize and practice. So for me, that little short story that doesn't take very long to read is very poignant and potent.
I think it's great that you've written such beautiful poetry in here. And it's not the kind of thing a lot of people say, I don't get poetry, I don't read, I don't understand it, I don't know what they're talking about. If you just read the words, you get the message. And I think that it can be healing for people. Most people that have been alive on the planet, I'd say for at least 12 years, I'll put that number out there.
Okay.
They've experienced what it's like to have a friend, and have that love feeling inside of you. They've experienced what it's like to have a parent and have that love feeling inside of you for a parent, and so it is there. And I think it's just so interesting and also unique the way you present the idea of love in this book. And you have yourself an enemy, and an enemy in the book is kind of like is Cupid.
Oh, but he's an ally. He's not an enemy.
He's a trickster. He's a prankster.
He's
He does things to
definitely.
upset your apple cart.
Or did he, or was it just the way I reacted to him? Because all those lessons are necessary, but you can take it however you want, however it plays out, and whatever it inspires you to think about with regards to all these different types of love that I talk about in the different poems or dreams. There's some of my dreams, and I get pretty raw there. I mean, I
You
share,
do.
some deep emotions.
Mhm.
And again, I was all alone. Some of this stuff had already been written. That's something I want to tell all writers. Don't throw
Mhm.
it out. Just file it where you can find it later. You never know when you're going to use it. That's one of my hot tips for writers. And so there was stuff as soon as I got the idea. And of course, look, I said to my editor who works with me on my books, she was there. She runs the writing group that I'm in. And so when it became time to really talk seriously about, we're going to edit this book, she thought we would go from beginning to end. I said, no, we'll do the poems and flash fiction separately. And the short story separately. Don't worry about how it goes together. I can see it in my head. But she was concerned about that. But because I am a 3D artist, I can see things even in text of how they need to go or format in a book. And it could have driven her a little nuts if we tried to go from beginning to end and understanding the components in it. And then it was her idea to put chocolate recipes in, because she knows I have some secret stashed vaults of chocolate and other cooking recipes, but chocolate made sense to go in this book in honor of Cupid's mother, Venus. That chocolate definitely belongs to her as, attraction and delicious and luxurious.
Yes. And I didn't know that Cupid had a mother until I
What?
read this book. I thought Cupid was a mother, but I didn't know that Cupid had a mother. I didn't know that,
um,
Venus, the
well, yes,
goddess.
yes, the goddess. And their story, I mean, I did add a bit of their story, one of their versions in the short story, because I like to insert a bit of learning, and I'm a huge fan, obviously, of mythology. So I love adding things like that. And it was super fun to put the chocolate recipes. There's a few other things that aren't chocolate, and aromatherapy. Those are
Mm.
things that have been stashed in the vault for decades. So I'm really happy that I'm sharing that with everybody.
And this is like your COVID product. You have
It's
something to
it's
show for
my,
your time, something beautiful.
solo lockdown, how to get through lockdown without. I actually, by the end of it, it wasn't about not losing it. It was, I think I could survive on a space station, you know, just because I can relate to those characters now that I see these sci-fi pieces or movies or books written about people alone in space. I get it, because I felt like I was alone in space during that time.
I'm still stuck on the idea of Venus giving offspring to this little thing,
Okay. Oh, he
this,
wasn't so little though.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
he
all
was big guy,
the cherub
big
thing. I
baby.
do talk about the cherub because he was pissed at the character of Cupid in the book in our conversation, which is what the short story is. It's a conversation between Cupid and myself.
Hmm.
And uh he expresses his not so happy feelings about being uh depicted as a fat baby and associated with doilies.
And so
because
Cupid is
because he
male.
there's a photograph that my artist who does my layout work and artwork for me shot at a museum in Europe in there, of a sculpture of Cupid holding Psyche. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous statue. And that's not a fat baby Cupid. That's a hot Cupid, hot man Cupid.
Ooh.
Yeah, he morphs in the story into his hot male self. We have to understand too, he's depicted in other mythologies from other places. So I talked a little bit about Kamadeva, who is the one of the Far Eastern versions, Kama being desire. And so I had to morph into Kamadeva for a bit too in the short story.
Yeah, this book can kind of like take you away, I'd say. And I mean, it will open your mind because it's not exactly what you would expect. But did you find that writing this book was a healing process for you? Was
Almost
that the
definitely.
outcome, healing and the
Mm,
process? I'm wondering.
absolutely. It was very, very healing because I was grieving my mother's death. She died right before the
Yeah.
lockdown. So I had written poems prior and then during the time of her declining to death, and then after, and then in memorial to her. So, yes, it was very, very, very healing.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of like she's almost like she lived on in your creation of
Mm,
writing about the subject of love as you're feeling the love for your mother. That's a
right.
beautiful thing.
It's very scrapbook like. There's photographs of her
Hmm.
and all kinds of tributes to people that have given me love, that I've received love from, that I've been so grateful for, and that I've given love to.
Let me just like digress a little bit because we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to ask you a little bit about because people you take on clientele, you take in clientele as and talk to them about their astrological charts, and they
Mm,
I'm sure that people come to you with like the chart or the information so you can create even two charts themselves and maybe their prospective or current lover, their
mhm.
children. Like, how often do you do that? Because I know people, I've noticed that get very distressed about love situations, I find, almost more than bad health.
Oh, absolutely, Tony, which is a little bit off to me because my advice to anyone is health first, then family, then career or externals.
Hmm.
But when it comes to just this, what you're asking about, of what do people primarily come to me for, it's the relationship way more than anything else. Okay, everything in life is a relationship, and it does affect these other things profoundly, our well-being and our ability to function in our careers. So it's okay, I understand, but I do wonder why, why. It reminds me of the opening bit in Eat, Pray, Love, where
Hmm.
there's the little story about the refugee in the boat who, they're refugee in a boat going to a refugee camp. And what are they asking? I met this guy in the boat. This is when they get to the refugee camp. This is what they ask to the psychologist. I was in the boat and I met this guy and I'm just wondering what's going on. That just makes me laugh because this is what people ask me day in and day out. What are they thinking? I actually posted a little reel to social media today saying, if you want to know what the other person is thinking, go and speak to them face to face. Don't use text. It's so easy to be avoiding that or evasive or reading in between the lines. No, we're visual communicators. That's why we like to look at things and watch videos of all sorts of things, because but especially when we're communicating, because if we have the gift of sight, it's so important to see the other person's facial expressions. This
Yeah, I
is how
think
we communicate. There's still monkey and lizard in there.
it's funny people ask you like, like what's he going to do? What was he thinking? It's like ask him. I had a discussion with a friend today about something about that. It was something about a mechanic, believe it or not. I said, just ask him. Ask him. I can't answer what he's going to tell you.
Mm.
And she kind of got a little unraveled about that.
It's fear. That's fear.
Well, that could be. I'm not sure what she was. I don't know what was in her mind, but that could be.
Well, there would only be fear or anxiety, something that happened in the past that you're afraid to trigger again, or fear of the future and what will the response be. But Yes, but when it comes to relationships, especially in the beginning, if people are flirting or people start off as friends with benefits and then they start having feelings, or maybe they really had feelings in the beginning, but now it's getting to the height that they can't handle it anymore. And then I have to be ever so delicate, ever so gentle in steering the vision, the acceptance, the idea that, well, but that's what your agreement is, and then the fear of making an agreement, of going to the person and saying, I'd like to know what the rules and boundaries are of this relationship. If you were going to a new job, you'd probably want to know the definition of what you were expected to do, right? But in relationships that begin maybe physically because of a hot attraction, which they do often, or an emotional feeling, or even, it could happen a spiritual thing. You could meet in a spiritual group of sorts, and it just, we've got to then build it out from there, and that happens face to face communication. It could be on video chat if you don't have the ability to be in each other's physical space. That would be my second choice. But any other thing, voice only or text, is going to be misleading. Be careful.
I know, because you really don't hear communication is not just with your mouth, it's with your ears, it's with your body. There's a lot of ways we communicate, body language. Everybody's heard that, but I agree with you on this stuff. And, it's just the subject of love is something that's the most important thing on most people's mind. And I think everybody's looking for the ultimate in that. As we approach Valentine's Day, wear your red or pink or whatever, wear it all year. I say Valentine's Day is every day because we're supposed to love each other. But, just always remember one thing, Cupid is a bastard. And so I say, read this book, it really is quite the muse, but it's not, it's like, really there's a serious takeaway from this, but it's a kind of read that it's like, I don't want to say easy to read, but as you're reading it, you realize it's just so worthwhile. It's so worthwhile. Check it out. Cupid is a bastard, and happy Valentine's Day to you, Ambika.
Well, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you too. I wish it for all of us. And there was one thing I did want to add earlier. You were asking me about putting two charts together. Absolutely. Synastry. Looking at the two, there are many different views that are taken when analyzing relationship through astrology. It's not just your sun sign or your moon sign. We have to really take into consideration the relationships between the two charts.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have to understand that that's not the only thing determining relationship. That's showing potentials. And then what choices we make is what either carries out potentials or not.
Well, ambikadevi.com, that's Ambika, AmbikaDevi, ambikadevi.com. You could book a reading with her and she could tell you more about your personal situation. And she's very, very good at it. I recommend her highly in terms of astrological readings. And I thank you so much, Ambika, for coming on the show. I know the audience likes to hear about this kind of stuff. All people do. This is what we're interested in. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's the most important thing in our lives is our relationships with each other, not just romantic, even with your kids or whatever. Thanks, Ambika. This was great.
Well, thank you, Toni.
Because everybody's got someone that they want to know if this is right for them. Thanks so much for sharing. And we'll talk again. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you next time. And I'll have another interesting guest for you on the Energy Stoners Cafe and Talk with TQ. See you soon. Happy Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.